As Mr. Clough used to always say, if there's something worth fighting for, you never give in and you show a lot of determination.
Yeah. Thought he'd got it, but he hadn't. Here's Robertson. Birtles near post, Woodcock far. There goes Woodcock! 2-0 to Forest, and Woodcock says thanks for the cross and thanks for the goal.
There's Lloyd, and it must be in. Yes! Tony Woodcock.
Hi Tony, it's great to have you here at the City Ground today ahead of our UEFA Europa League quarter-final versus Porto, where tonight you'll be presented your 1980 European Cup winners' medal. It's been a long time coming, but surely a moment that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, tremendously. Yeah. It has been a long time coming, but as Mr. Clough used to always say, if there's something worth fighting for, you never give in and you show a lot of determination. And I've had to do that, although it's not been 46 years or whatever it is, you know, thinking about it all the time. We tried when it was really early days and he didn't want to know anything about it. And then the last 18 months, there's been a number of people involved in it because you have to get it sanctioned by UEFA. You can't just go and have a medal made for you, it has to be sanctioned. So it's only a smallish medal, like a coin, but it's got a big meaning behind it. So I'm delighted I'm going to finally get it and be classed like all my friends as a double European Cup winner back to back, which they always put out in front of me.
Yeah, of course. This way, gents. This way, John. That's it. Thank you. Just, Tony, a quick one on your own as well.
And you did play a key role in the first two rounds of the tournament against Oster and Argus Patesti. What are your memories of those nights?
I think Argus Patesti, I think they were very physical. I think Gary Birtles and myself, we got kicked every ball we got hold of or tried to get hold of. I can remember after the game we just sat looking at each other, right? And Cloughie came over and burst out laughing, yeah? And thought, good God, that was the game, wasn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, some games you have to play football, play really good. Some days you have to battle it through. Some days being a forward, you get treated pretty roughly. And that was one of the games. But as I say, it all belongs to the game. And if you want to win something, you've got to be good at all those things.
And in addition to 1980, you played in every game on our way to success in the 1979 European Cup. What are your memories of that campaign and how did it feel to lift the trophy on that special night in Munich?
Well, first of all, we're all novices playing in Europe. So when we were champions and we started getting Liverpool Football Club a little bit upset, we were looking forward to going to Italy or going to Spain or going somewhere else exotic to play our game. And what happens the very, very first round? We get, picked against Liverpool Football Club, who were possibly the best team in Europe. They were European champions at the time. So, no doubt about it, we're all disappointed for about 24 hours until Mr. Clough says, listen, if you want to win this thing, you've got to knock these teams out of the way or get them out of the way as quickly as possible. So, 24 hours later, we're up and ready for them. And if you remember that game, is one of the iconic goals of Nottingham Forest, Colin Barrett's volley to make it 2-0, and the fact that the lads, we always have a bit of a joke about it because we're 1-0 up and it's getting towards the end of the game and Colin gets a block in and he goes again and he blocks it again and he pushes the ball to Birtles, and apparently on the bench you've got Brian Clough and Peter saying, where the hell is he going to? He's going for great goal, right? So we always have a laugh about that, but there's an iconic goal that set us on our way. If you're knocking Liverpool out, then you've got a chance against anyone.
And that night in Munich, thousands of Forest fans behind the goal. What are your memories of lifting the trophy and sharing that moment with the fans?
Well, first of all, there's the famous Larry Lloyd Blazer story that was around about that time when Larry hadn't got his club blazer or it was in his case. And Mr. Clough just kept saying every time Larry said a word, he put £50 on it. So it was, my jacket's in, £50. But it's all going to be £100. But I can't wait. 150, and it went on, so we were all sitting there looking what's going to happen until it got to about £650, which was a lot of money in those days, yeah. So no doubt about it, we were tense going to the stadium, and I remember that Mr. Clough came down, the coach, and he said to everyone, he got a bottle of beer in his hand. He says, come on lads, you know, loosen up a little bit. Does anyone want a beer? Of course, we all said no. And we're looking out the window, and there was a lot of fans there, and there were a lot of Malmo fans who were going past at the time. And of course, they were giving us the very famous, you know, we think it's going to be a 2-2 draw sign, yeah? Which at that moment, the guy who was doing that walked into a lamppost, and that seemed to break the tension while we're on the coach. So we get to the Olympic Stadium, and I have to admit that when we walked in the stadium and 3/4 of it was empty, except from behind the goal where it was just a massive red and white, which was, you know, is absolutely fantastic for us, yeah? So, brilliant support. We're very disappointed about the game because we're a good footballing team. We wanted to show that we could play football at the highest level and put on a show. But it was difficult. They played well in defence, they mastered the defence, they made it very difficult for us. And after the game, I remember we all sat in the changing rooms. We were a little bit disappointed because we hadn't played to our potential, yeah? And then Brian Clough and Peter Taylor came in and said, listen lads, you've had a fantastic tournament. You know, it's brilliant, you're European champions. So slowly but surely we started to think, yeah, European champions, let's get out on the town.
But it wasn't just one special night, it was the culmination of 3 incredible seasons under Clough and Taylor. How much did it mean to you as a local lad to be part of that special team?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I always say to everyone, I live in North London at the moment, if I come back to Nottingham, or if any of our team, you know, the so-called miracle men come back here, it's like the Beatles going back to Liverpool. I mean, the receptions we get, it's fantastic, and it just shows you the journey that all the fans went on alongside us. And I remember that we were hearing stories about, you know, not only Nottingham Forest fans, but fans from all over the country were wishing us well and wanting us to be European champions, because at this time it was either Liverpool or Nottingham Forest, and once Aston Villa were dominating Europe. So it was the feeling that the whole country wanted us to win. So yeah, and now, was it 40, 50 years later, we're still talking about it, which is brilliant. A footballing fairy tale that it won't be repeated anymore, I'm sure it won't.
So you had an incredible career for club and country. At Forest in total you played 181 times, scoring 62 goals. That includes promotion to the First Division, the First Division title, 2 League Cups and of course the 2 European Cups. When you look back on it all now, was that beyond your wildest dreams of what you could have achieved at your home club?
Well, I'm sure I'm like every other young player. You know, first thing you think of when you join a professional football club is how do I start to move from team to team. So your first fight as an apprentice professional footballer in those days, that's where I met Viv Anderson, we're both apprentices, you've got to try and get a professional contract. So you're fighting against 15 or 16 other young guys, which are told right at the start of their quest, listen guys, there's 16 of you here, but there's not probably one, if we're lucky, 2 of you are going to make it. Of course, the whole 16 thought, I'm the one, I'm the one, I'm the one. But lucky enough, Viv and myself, we came through. Then once you get through, you sign your first professional contract. You're playing for the reserves. You've come from the youth team to the reserves. You play in the reserve, you want to get in the first team. So that first team debut is also very, very important and very interesting. And mine was against Aston Villa at Villa Park. And I remember going into the little entry where the first team changing room is, and the team's up, and I'm there at number 10. You know, I couldn't believe it. I think I'm playing tonight at Villa Park. You know, so then you carry on. I've got to stay in the team. Then I had a period where I couldn't do anything right. Was it my attitude? Was it I wasn't fit enough? I don't know. But I had a good season where it wasn't working for me. And then Brian Clough came. He put me in the squad straight away. I thought, here's someone who knows what he's talking about when it comes to football. But after that, it was pretty tough. Having to stand up to him, you know, he's a pretty strong personality. And you know, when you want to go and speak to him and find out why you're not playing and why why you're not getting any further. And there's a few good stories about that. But then when you get there, you know, he used to say to me, he wouldn't say you've played well. He would look at you and he'd say, young man, you're a credit to the game. And once Brian Clough said that to you, you could go out, you know, and play again without any problem, right? He also used to say, young man, I wouldn't know a centre forward if he's standing in front of me, which was slightly admitting he'd made a bit of a mistake, or it took quite a bit of a time until he actually thought I could play.
And you've just alluded to what a character and strong personality Brian Clough was. What was your relationship like, if there was any, away from the football pitch with Brian?
Wasn't any. No, there's not any. You know, we're all very thankful that Brian Clough and Peter Taylor put a great bunch of players together, and we won all those things, and it's still going down in the history of Nottingham Forest Football Club. In fact, the stories of professional football for all those years. But believe me, if you didn't do it for him, if you weren't the sort of player what he was looking for, then you would be out. I remember Asa Hartford coming. Asa Hartford, a brilliant midfield player, Scottish international. And he said in front of us all after 2 weeks, he said, Asa, I think I've made a mistake with you. The next day, he'd gone. So although we're grateful, there's no off-the-field relationships or anything like that. We went away, he took us away a lot. We used to go to Mallorca, as everyone knows, pretty often throughout the year. But it wasn't, sitting by the pool or anything with Mr. Clough and Mr. Taylor. It was like, you're in that hotel, we're in that hotel, right? Don't get into trouble. No getting into trouble with the police. We'll see you in 2 or 3 days for the first training session. And that was it, yeah.
Of course, there's so many well-documented stories about Brian Clough told by yourself and your teammates. Is there a story or a memory, perhaps, that's not so well known that you'd be happy to share with us?
I'll share everything, but I think you've heard them all, right? You come back to Nottingham. We've said many a time when we've been speaking to fan clubs and groups of people, are you not fed up of hearing the same old stories? And they go, no, we want to hear them again. So I don't think there's anyone that you can really, go back that no one's heard. There's the famous one where I'd got a 3-day growth. I'm playing for the reserves, and we're playing up at Newcastle United, and I get on the coach. I'm started playing well again for the reserves, and people are saying he should be getting a first team chance. So we go and play. I score a great volley. I can still remember it today at St James's Park. We come back down, and I get a phone call, and they said, Mr. Clough wants to see you Monday morning. So, what am I, 18 or something like that? I live in Eastwood. I have to get on 2 buses, one to Nottingham, one from Nottingham to Trent Bridge. I wasn't getting in my Porsche 18 or anything like that, or my Mercedes. I was on the bus. So I turn up 9 o'clock, I go into his office. He says, tell me about the game at the weekend. And I say, yeah, played well. Thought you must have heard I scored an absolute fantastic goal. Scored a nice goal. And he jumps and goes, I wasn't talking about the goal, young man. I'm talking about your face. You came unshaven. And I said, well, I wasn't really unshaven. He said, well, why? I said, well, I wanted to be a little bit different. It was trimmed. He goes, young man, if you want to be different, you come to this club, and when you play, you score 3 goals every week. And if you can do that, then you're going to be different. And if you come unshaven again to this club, you'll never play again. Get out. That was one of about 3 or 4 times he threw me out of the office.